And that really adds a different dimension to being here.
Are you one of those guys who got really addicted to Russia? I know lots of them, like in journalism, other walks of life, who really get addicted to Russia and like spend here 10, 20, 30 years and keep coming and going. Are you one of those who are addicted, or it's just the business?
It's a love-hate relationship. I can't live with it, I can't live without it. I did actually leave Russia before the crisis in '98 and lived in Budapest for a while, and Germany and the UK, and spent a lot of time travelling around. Still involved in Russia, travelling back frequently. But I found that I missed it. I am one of these people now who will spend the rest of his life either based in Russia or dealing with Russia, and continuing to collect Aeroflot air miles.
What have you missed? The things that you mentioned, the benefits, or was there something else?
I think after 13 years of dealing in Russia, every single day throws up an issue, a challenge, and you have to still think very creatively to overcome.
Challenge like what? Like parking your car outside your office?
Parking your car. I mean, even sometimes finding a parking space in central Moscow can give you a thrill when you see an empty space.
Bribing a traffic police officer.
Well, just getting through the day sometimes can be a challenge. But when you get through the end of the day and you sit down with a beer or a cup of coffee,
I did it.
Yeah, you know exactly what I'm talking about. And I guess.
Okay. I know that many recruitment agencies, including yours, I think, has to deal with Russians seeking jobs abroad. Is that true?
Correct.
Well, where? What are the countries where Russians want to go to find a job? Let's talk about the other direction.
Yeah, you see, I have some thoughts on this. There seems to be a perception that Russians do want to get experience overseas. I don't think there's any specific country that has any more needs for Russian nationals than any others. Most would probably look at the States, maybe the UK, maybe Germany, depending on the language skills. There's no.
So the Russians start with learning language mostly.
I guess if you don't have any foreign languages and speak purely Russian, your chances of finding something overseas are pretty slim. And most people speak English if they speak any foreign language. There aren't any particular requirements for Russians to work overseas. I guess as more Russian companies diversify from Russia and move into other markets, they will want to have Russian employees in the same way that American companies employ Americans here. But I wouldn't say there's any specific...
But when Russians seek jobs abroad, they're mostly, I think, looking at countries where they consider life is better than in their own country. They don't want to go to Indonesia, to Chad, to Nigeria.
Well, we recently placed a HR director in New Guinea for one of the Russian organisations, and that person wanted to go just to do something slightly different. I'd actually challenge the thought that Russians are trying to leave the country. My experience is that we have more Russians approaching us through our network who want to come back to Russia.
The expats.
Well, maybe they've been out for a year on secondment or they've been studying. But now very much the market's moving so quickly in Russia that the opportunities are here. Your career can move 3 or 4 times faster in Russia purely because there aren't the skills here.
Then what are the Russians looking for abroad? More money, more stability, or like more comfort? I mean,
I guess it's a quality of life, standard of living. And also maybe a little bit of naivety sometimes. I know a number of Russians who've said to me, I really want to give something a try in, let's say, London, for example, without realising that rather than 13% income tax, there's a 40% income tax.
And they don't know that a pack of Marlboro costs £5 in London.
That's right. And unless they have friends that come over fairly frequently and bring them cases of Marlboro, they're going to have difficulties with that. Taxes, the cost of living, cost of transport, cost of accommodation, and the fact that once you're actually in the UK, you're competing with the UK market, a UK labour force.
You mentioned UK. I think there's about 1 million of Russians already today living in London. Do you think that they're all making some money there? Do you think that Russians today are starting to pose a threat to locals who also need employment?
Only in the housing market.
In the housing market?
I think so. If you get to certain parts of London, like Chelsea, for example, I think they are driving the housing pricing up.
Well, you first came to Russia in 1986, the Soviet Union, is that
correct,
right?
Yeah.
When you were a student. Well, can you try to remember some of your first impressions of this country when you first came here? And is it really, well, it's common knowledge that Russia is a different country. Well, is it really a different country?
I think there's been a lot of improvements. Maybe some things aren't as good as they were back then. My first impressions of Russia were of standing for about 2 hours in Sheremetyevo queue for the passport control. Some things don't change. And the Soviet Union, lack of choice, everything else that people remember from those days. Now you can do anything you want in Russia.
Mr. Elson, in one of your interviews, you said, I quote, "To be more attractive employee for the local market and to positively compare to Russian specialists, a foreigner must possess some unique knowledge, like, for instance, work experience in the Russian or other developing markets. This is a plus." Do you provide, other employment agencies, provide any sort of educational programs to adapt a specialist to life in Russia, to make him really a piece of cake for Russian employees?
We don't know, but what we would do is we look for people that have that kind of internationalist approach to life. If you've purely spent your time working for a domestic German, American, UK company, you've hardly travelled, don't speak a foreign language, then your chances of integrating into Russia are pretty slim. There are companies that will provide consultancy services to help you integrate. Your employer may provide you some kind of assistance in integrating. But there are some people that just will never hack it, and some people that will. We've got enough experience to know who's going to, or who has a higher probability of actually succeeding in managing life in Russia. That's before they start work.
You've been in the market, here in the Russian market, doing what you do for the last 13 years. But these are the years, at least the last 10 years, are the years when people have started talking about globalization of everything, of goods, of services, of manufacturing. Do you think that globalization really affects your business? Is it leading to a formation of a global labor market? Or people still consider their homeland the place that they really belong?
I guess most people still want to work in the country they're from. Most Russians want to stay in Russia, Brits in Britain. There is a global employment market. There has been for many, many years. It's possible for anybody from any country to work in pretty much any country. Sometimes there's bureaucratic hurdles, work permits, travel permits. Sometimes it's cultural. But there is a global market. If I wanted to work in Vietnam or in Australia, theoretically I could do it. It may be more difficult for some countries.
Thank you very much. And just a reminder that our guest today was Tremayne Elson, head of an international recruitment agency in Moscow. And that's it for today from all of us here. Your comments and interview suggestions are always welcome. Just drop me a line at algrinov@rttv.ru. Let's keep Spotlight interactive. We'll be back tomorrow with more first-hand comments on what's going on in and outside Russia. Until then, stay in Russia today and take care.